Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Get Out of Rap. Today, I'm very pleased to be joined by Ian Chappell, who is Director of Consulting internationally for Centrical. And I've known Ian a long time. We've been at a lot of events together. We've got very similar backgrounds. Ian, thank you for joining me today.
Yeah, no, thanks for having us on, Martin. It's obviously a podcast that I follow religiously, and I know that you're doing some great work with the pod and also with the team leader community, which is it's exactly what this industry needs. You know, it's the people that matter sometimes do get a little bit left behind with thought leadership and these kind of things. So I think what you're doing is fantastic, and it's a real pleasure for me and Centrical to be on our first Get Out of Rap.
Thank you very much. And straight back at you. You can tell when you meet people, can't you? You just go, "Oh yeah, we've got similar scars and stories," and it does kind of shape who you are. But
Yeah.
also, you guys at Centrical do some great stuff, and I'm not just saying that. We will, and we'll get into that in a bit. But so right now, Director of Consulting internationally. But where did it start for you? This journey in our industry.
Yeah, so obviously I'm from the northeast, and it's like we
Oh
should
yeah.
probably be playing that. Yeah, we should probably play some like kind of violin sob story music in the background for this one. But I went to college after school, went to college, and then didn't know if I wanted to go to uni or not. So I had kind of the gap year, and at the time, if you didn't want to go and work in retail, there was a lot of contact centers opening. So we're talking like 98, 99. And in Sunderland, there was some really big kind of flagship contact centers like Royal Mail, Barclays, and One to One, which then became T-Mobile. So I started at One to One as a call taker, and I took my first call on the 17th of August, 1999, just after my 17th birthday. And I wasn't allowed to work past 5 o'clock because I wasn't 18. So we got put in our teams, and they all went off to do kind of 12-hour shifts, work until 10 on a Saturday. And for my first kind of year, I had to like work Monday to Friday, 9 to 5, because of restrictions around under 18. So I was an agent, and obviously being a teenager, I was probably an agent with a little bit of a chip on my shoulder as well. Being told kind of what to do all day, every day by people who I don't think they were that bought into really the development of people back then. It was more kind of the customer's always right. You do what the customer needs. There was no such thing as employee engagement. It wasn't even mentioned there. It was literally, there's your headset, there's your shifts, go and sit over there and take 100 calls. If you need to go to the toilet, put your hand up. It was like completely different to what it is now. So I did that for 2 or 3 years, moved into kind of back office roles like email, admin, getting a real sort of view as to what contact center operations were all about. Then I moved into being a team leader, as probably most people, if they hang around long enough, you've done all right in that role. There's your team leader hat. You start on Monday, learn off that person. All right, great. And then I did that for a while. Then I moved into WFM, and that just came about purely out of coincidence. There was a guy that I worked with in a kind of a back office team who moved into projects. He asked me if I wanted to go to India to set up an outsourced contact center for T-Mobile. So I went and did that. And when I was out there, I met the husband of the manager of WFM. And he said, look, I think you'd be great for real time. You handle the kind of on the floor stuff really well. So then fell into real time, sort of the contact center police. You've been on rap for 3 minutes, running around with a piece of paper. These people left themselves logged in. Again, totally different to how real time works now, right? And then just moved through planning. So I did about 12 to 13 years in planning roles, finishing up before I got into kind of this gig, this side of the fence. I finished up as kind of a planning manager. And yeah, so I saw the contact center from every single side in what probably 15 or 16 years, and then moved into being a consultant for workforce management around 6 years ago. Did that for 3 years, and then I saw Centrical on LinkedIn, and I just thought it was like a light bulb moment. Every single vendor on the market talks about employee engagement, and this, when I saw it, I was like, this is exactly what this is for. This is kind of that. It's a really tough job. How do we make that day to day more engaging and get people bought into what they do? So this really is software for people. But yeah, I really love what we do, and I think we've done a great job. But having the background and being, like you said, having the scars, right? Like I can't sort of what we're going to talk about today. If I don't have that background, you might as well just be taught to chat GPT. So it's yeah. So I hope that kind of answers the question. But yeah, we've got the scars to prove it. We know how difficult it is, and we'll get into sort of how the roles evolve, both frontline manager, frontline colleague, how that's evolving still, and how we're kind of here to help and listening to the market and trying to transition with the roles, with what we're doing with the product.
That is a whistle stop talk. I just want to. There's so much there that I'd love to pick into, and don't worry, we're going to get to the good stuff. But how taking you back then to the 17-year-old culture shock of kind of being just hammered by calls and being told what to do and customers always right, and like you say, just no concept of employee engagement back then. It's funny where you are now, but um what kept you then in that role? Because you said you did that for a couple of years before being a team leader. What kept you doing that?
Yeah, I think it probably came from kind of how I was brought up, to be honest with you. My dad was a miner, then he was a builder, and he was kind of self-employed. So it was always kind of get a steady job, get a steady income, and then it's kind of wife, house, 2.4 children. Like that kind of, it was that kind of like sort of background where they were from. I guess it was like a generational thing. So, once I got into a job and I started sort of making money, and the contact centers paid pretty well. Like for a 17-year-old, they paid fantastic. I was able to go to Ibiza with my mates, start my driving lessons, all that good stuff. So I guess it was the fact that you had a good time outside of work when you're 17, so it made going into work more bearable. But I think what really kept me there, right, was obviously I'd gone to school and I'd gone to college, and I was with people of similar age. But when I went into a contact center and went into that team, I was with people from all different backgrounds, cultures, different ages, different viewpoints. It was hilarious,
Yeah.
really funny. You used to get ribbed for being the young'un and all that good stuff. And I think it was the kind of I guess the banter that keeps you there. I've still sort of got really good memories of some of the teams I worked in, that team of 12 or 13, and just some of the things, used to do like Fat Friday, go to Chippy, all the stuff that I think sometimes we've lost now with COVID and people working, sitting in bedrooms and sitting in their kitchen taking calls. The role itself, like I said, must be really tough. So I think what made a really tough job easy was working with great people,
Mm.
to be honest with you.
And what kind of team leader were you?
I was, and I've wrote down kind of three types of team leader, right? As I sort, and sometimes how I do still see it, because, and I'll get onto what I was like, but I don't think there's like kind of a, the customers that we speak to and the prospects we speak to, there still isn't kind of a finishing school or a grad bay for team leaders. I think it is improving slightly, but back then it was kind of, there was three. There was the don't shoot the messenger team leader, right?
Yeah.
And I was probably a mix of all three of these, right? It was the don't shoot the messenger team leader. I'm not really bought into giving you a bad message, but this is what my ops leader's telling me to tell you because I'm getting in the neck. There was the kind of smile and nod team leader. You'd go off into a room, you'd have a conversation, you'd have a bit of a rant and a rave, and it would just be like, yeah, 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 take a couple of kind of false notes, and you'd never hear anything. And again, that's really disengaging as well. And then I think the final one's kind of the bad habits team leader, like the kind of deputy, right? The one who'd been a buddy and learned from someone else who was probably not the best anyway, because they were going on holiday or they're off on long-term sick or they're moving into another department. So then it was like sort of you had like you don't shoot the messenger, the smile and nod it, and the bad habits one. And I probably had traits of all of them, to be honest with you. And I think I was just too young. I think
Yeah.
I was just a little bit too young, and we didn't really have the framework in place to have the right conversations. And I think that's critical. I think you've got to be credible to your peers when you've gone from working with them to then sort of managing them, or supervising them, or coaching them, or having those conversations of like, I need to take some time off because my dog's going to be put down, or all the stuff that comes with managing people. I just don't think I was really ready for it. So that's why it was probably best that I then moved into planning, to be honest with
Can I
you.
throw in one more? Because
Yeah.
I saw this both. I think I was a bit of this, and then I saw this when I managed team leaders. One more that I'd throw in because I love those three. but potentially a fourth is the union rep. Yeah. So
Yes.
so I spent, especially when I first started, if my team said they weren't happy with something, I didn't judge it at all or try and question it or maybe talk to them about why things needed to be done. I just went straight to my boss. So my team aren't happy about this. We need to change it.
Yeah.
And you were just like a
Yeah.
mouthpiece for the more
Yeah.
vocal in your
Yeah.
team. Um, and then managing team leaders, you could recognize versions of yourself or the character moments in time where you'd be like, oh god, this team leader's a pain, and I'd be like, I also used to be a pain for that kind of
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
Because you're right,
Yeah.
you don't know what you're doing, do you?
I don't think so. I don't think so. And it's almost like, when you start in any job, like you're in that incubation and then that sort of ramp phase, and you get to the kind of top of the mountain being we used to go like in levels to agent. The top level's level 3. So you got to level 3 as an agent. You got your kind of gold badge. You were seen as sort of one of the senior agents who was, doing a good job and all that good stuff. But then when you then all of a sudden be the manager, you're back at the start again. And so you get to the top of the mountain, then you just back to square one all over again. And like I said, I think it's endemic in the industry. I don't think it's probably going to change in terms of recruiting managers, but it's kind of how we set them up is kind of crucial to their success, but also to the success of the people that they're managing. And we're in massive crisis point with attraction, retention, attrition, all that stuff that we know, and the manager experience plays a huge part in that. Because
Mhm.
I always think that in Centrical we hear that we're fixing for the same things in almost every vertical in contact center industry, right? All agents care about is, do I get tracked well? Is there development? Can I get time off? Am I paid on time? And what are my shifts like? That's generally those a mix of those things, whether that's travel and hospitality, telco, banking, whatever it might be. The manager's crucial in all that, and conveying the right messages and having the right conversations and not being hidden behind a monitor or being visible, and being present. And
Mhm.
I don't think I was set up for all of that. Yeah.
No, I don't think any of us are. And
Yeah.
I know when, so I've been uh, kind of involved or work, seeing you centrical stuff and meeting all the lovely people there for I think couple of years now.
Yeah.
And um that light bulb moment you mentioned, what was that then? Because I think I've had the same one when I saw what your capabilities were. And I guess more important than the capabilities is the reason why you are doing this.
Yeah. So if we go back a step, probably 5 years ago, and it was like every single vendor in my world, selling software into contact centers, into outsourced partners, they were all talking about employee engagement. We'll fix employee engagement. We'll improve employee engagement. Whether that was through automating some boring work through bots, whether it was automating some shift stuff for schedules, whether it was letting agents self-schedule. Not many people were talking about kind of how do we improve that at desk engagement? How do we get people
Mm,
to care more when they're at work? And that's all we focus on, right? That we're not a workforce management solution. We're not a scheduling solution. What we take care of is, hopefully agents will have a great work-life balance. But if they're still contracted 40 hours a week with a bad manager, they're not getting insight into what they need to do, how they need to do it, what does their development pathway look like, they'll still be disengaged at work. So how do we improve that kind of at desk engagement? And that's why we came kind of out with this sort of view of, we're a performance experience platform. Can we build a good experience around performance? And again,
mm,
I always talk about kind of three main things: visibility, ownership, and collaboration. I think in a lot of businesses still, if we look back to kind of performance management, the dreaded performance management as a process, visibility, collaboration, and ownership, they weren't three things that were included in that process. In my opinion, it was all very top down. Don't shoot the messenger. This is
it was like
what
fear, obedience.
it was. Yeah, yeah. The dreaded PIP. A personal
Yeah,
development plan sounds lovely, but in theory, as a sort of a 18-year-old or a 19-year-old agent going on a PDP, you're going up against the firing squad, because the,
yeah.
the way that we convey the messaging is atrocious.
Mm,
And I think we still hear this today, and I think people are, business are doing a lot to try and improve that, but I think there's still a long way to go. So yeah, so we talk a lot about, let's create an experience around performance. It's not something that's going away, but let's feel as though the agents own that. They work with their manager closely. They've got that good experience between each other, but the visibility is crucial. So yeah.
And I think that the thing that struck me instantly when looking at that, I mean, I'm all in with kind of, it feels like reclaiming performance development, right? Performance management, call it what you will, to take it from something that's a fearful part of you leaving our industry. Rather, it is actually helping you be the best version of yourself, right? Which is, if you took this in any other industry and said, "Oh, well, I'm going to work with you now to make you better at your job," you go, "Okay, great, thanks." Is with us, like you say, especially when you're younger, and someone says, "Right, you need to go on a performance improvement plan," you instantly go to, "What happens if I don't improve?"
Yeah, I'm
And
going
I'm
to get
like,
sacked
"Well,
straight
let's
away.
just let's
Yeah,
just say it's not looking good."
yeah, and I think our CEO came up with a real good term about flipping the pyramid, right? So rather than being kind of a top down, this is how we're going to do things, almost make it feel to the frontline teams that they own their performance
Mm,
and they can work
mm,
together, collaborate with each other to really drive the improvement. But again, it's not just saying there's a hard and fast target of 90% and you're at 60, so you're rubbish. Can we incrementally help you improve over time? Because you're on a development curve, you're embedding skills. You might have just come back from long-term absence. Whatever it might be, let's help people improve so that they feel as though that their kind of competence and confidence is working together over a period of time, so that they get to where we need them to get to, so that they're not saying, well, "This is completely overwhelming. I'm going to go and drive for Amazon or go and work in Costa or Starbucks." Because I think to speak about when we look at those stats around kind of recruitment and stuff, people are leaving the industry now, where maybe when we started out, it was, "I'm going to go next door because I get paid an extra £500 a year." Now people are just saying, "Right, well, I'm not doing this for a living," and they're leaving the industry altogether, which I think is a little bit of a worry.
mm,
But we need to get a handle on making that experience at work a little bit better.
And how important then is it to you guys and you in what you offer, that there's an element of something we've both mentioned that's kept us in the industry, and that's fun?
Yes, so gamification is always been in contact center, right? So we use gamification a lot, right? It should be the carrot and not the stick. We want to incentivize people to care that little bit more, and we do that through the things I've mentioned: visibility, ownership, and collaboration. But if we think back, there'll be a whiteboard with tinsel around it, and there'll be a bell that you rang, and if you won a raffle ticket, you could pick a bottle of vodka out of the basket at the team manager's desk. All that stuff that was in there. But I guess just those sort of incremental reminders and thank yous go down a lot, and automating those, and you know work is work. We don't see ourselves as people are going to come to work and play a game. We use kind of game mechanics to keep people on the right track and keep them focused and motivated. But it's not a case of at the end of every month you get rewarded. Can we say thanks to people daily?
Mm.
Can we give people small rewards daily? Can we get people to give each other thanks, through a mechanism we have in the solution called Kudos, where you can thank your colleague, and then the manager can then thank the colleague for identifying that, and all that good stuff. So it kind of drives a bit more of a positive environment. But we use game mechanics to pretty good effect. We started out as a gamification company way back when, but obviously we've brought it on a lot now to build this experience around all things performance related.
I love the phrase game mechanics. And right from the get-go, I remember when I first looked at your offering and thought, I wish I'd had this both as an agent, but you've taken it on now, haven't you? And you're doing something that we're both very passionate about, and that is around the team leaders, around team
Yes.
managers.
Yeah.
Can you just
Yeah.
talk us through that?
Yeah, so we're just about to launch what we call Team Performance Central, and in essence, what we always look to do with any data that we're putting in front of an agent, or think about their team leaders. or supervisors, we always look to make that data actionable. Again, we want to get rid of some of the noise. We want to increase the value add time and get rid of admin time. We don't expect managers to be BI analysts. We don't want them pulling a million reports from a load of different data sources. Say, right, what conversation am I going to have with Martin today? I've not spoken to him since last month or last week. What do I need to do today? So we put everything front and center, right? We make it very, very easy to understand. We show sort of where the biggest areas for to say thanks to someone for improving slightly is. So, straight away as a manager, you can be the hero by giving someone a pat on the back or a thanks. But likewise, those more, historically difficult conversations, how can we give the manager a toolkit, right? And this is where I think the one size fits all of performance management is dead and buried, right? I mean, yes, you've got to have a target and how you're tracking against those targets, but we all know that. But if I can do a combination of different things to get the right result out of Martin, that might be different to Ian, but we want to get the same end point, but it might be a different set of things to do for each person to get to that point. So it could be that I might work better if I get set a coaching action with very sort of guided pointers of what I need to do. You might react better by being set a little challenge. Mark, if you can improve by 5% by next Friday, that's a thumbs up from me. We're on the right track, and it's something we can work on, rather than just being a pass or a fail, black or white, red or green, as it has been previously. So it's about giving the manager the insight. It's about, we're also as well launching an AI assistant, right? So at the minute, I think there's a lot of fear and sometimes a little bit confusion about what AI is going to do to the contact center role, whether that's a frontline colleague or a team leader. And what we always talk about is it's a term called augmentation. Can they live side by side? So can we, ask an AI chatbot to go and sort of find out what maybe am I missing? Who hasn't had kudos in the last week? Who's had the biggest improvement? And can you correlate that improvement maybe against another KPI? Can you write me a kudos thank you? Can you make it funnier? Because that person might like something that's a little bit more light-hearted. And that then gives the manager this huge toolkit and kind of all of the pointers they need to have the right discussion, but at the right time. So it's not just waiting for, got a performance review, at the end of next week, I'm going to spend 4 hours pulling all that together, and then you're not going to see it until you step into that room. That's now gone. It's about giving thanks, having the right conversations as and when they occur, so that we're always keeping people on the right track. But I don't think performance should be a secret to the frontline colleague or their manager. It should be fully visible all the time. But we need to get managers' heads out of pulling reports, trying to, disseminate what the data is telling them and getting them to have those conversations as and when it happens.
I love that. And I love the idea. The word that kept coming into my head when you were talking then was support.
Yeah.
So if I'm a frontline team member, I feel supported by the visibility and the comprehensiveness of what's being shown to me and how I can improve both through no intervention from my manager and with intervention.
Yes.
If I'm a manager, if any of us have been managers in the past, when you were mentioning how many hours it took to, I can remember being in a situation where just to get the right level of data that was being asked of me from those above me took me half of my day. And then what would happen is when they wanted to discuss either the team performance or individuals' performance, they would say, "What are you going to do about this? Because I want to see some improvement." And I'd say, "Well, I've only got 2 hours left, and I've got 15 in my team, and I know tomorrow I'm going to spend another 4 or 5 hours collating yesterday's information, and it was limiting the time for me to have a positive impact." So, just how you've explained there, using AI to go and gather that and present it in a way that I could use as a manager, for me, is probably the most salient point I've heard anyone make about AI in a long, long time.
Yeah, and we have been sort of challenged before when we've shown people it's like, but this surely can't replace coaching, like having a coaching discussion. It's like this is not gonna this is gonna make that coaching discussion more valuable.
Yeah,
You
and give
know,
you the time to do it.
yeah, yeah, and give you the time. You know, I was talking to one of our largest customers when I met them face to face last year, and their CEO just said, "Look, all I want my team managers to be are more impactful coaches. That's it. It's all I want them to be, more impactful coaches." And that really stuck with me. And what we're doing now is gonna really help bring that on. So whether you're a new team leader, you know, going into that sort of, you know, going into the team for the first time or for your first week, you're going to know exactly what and how and you know and what's worked in the past, what maybe hasn't worked. Or if you're an older team leader and maybe you have your own way of doing things, you might then be able to improve as well. But I think what it will ideally look to achieve in any organization is this kind of management consistency.
Mm.
You know, you used to know yourself, like you'd be on a team with a great team leader, then you were going over next week, you were moving to maybe a different department, or you used to do like sort of team changes, didn't they? Where you like have a bit of shuffle in the pack. Like, oh, I'm going to go over that team leader, and I've heard really bad things about that, and it's the kind of maybe it's a bad habits team manager, maybe it's a don't shoot the messenger one, but the experience isn't great. So can we make that experience a little bit more consistent across the operation? And that's what we're looking to do with this as well.
I think that's another good point because as soon as you get any kind of performance review that is associated with an outcome, right? And that outcome could be a 1 to 5 scale or whatever. I think where you guys come in and really help with that word there, consistency. I know I've been in a situation I can remember as an agent my team leader was tough, right? So didn't give out fives or fours very often and
Yeah,
would walk you through it. I knew I was better than a friend of mine. I know I was because we'd obviously talk all the time and even though we're in different teams and he'd come out of his appraisal like, oh I got a five. And I was like, that is then that makes you annoyed at your team
yeah,
leader.
yeah. And then you know you go
Why
into
are you
camp.
so requiring?
Yeah,
Why do you have standards?
but you know what it's like. You know, I think everyone's experience working in a frontline operation is different. But if we can make the sort of the delivery of the message and the management of the people consistent, you'll still have your really negative people. You're always going to have that, and it only takes kind of one bad apple in a team to kind of get people bickering or you know having a little bit of a whine and a moan about you know Big Brother and how bad it is to work here. But if we can get rid of some of that as well, I think that'll help keep people because again it makes the experience a little bit more positive. You know, it is a tough job, and
Mm,
with AI, it's only going to get tougher for the frontline guys. You know, it's going to
mm.
make the contacts probably a little bit longer because they're going to be dealing with only the difficult stuff. We used to love an afternoon of general inquiries or you know prepaid top up. You remember the scratch off cards, just
Yeah,
punching in numbers before it was in the IVR. Used to love that after a
yeah.
morning of maybe taking billing calls and getting shouted at. All of them call types are generally gone now, or they're
Mm,
on the way out.
mm.
And even I've spoken to customers where they've took some of their AI out of the operation because it's having a detrimental effect on that experience of their agents, like automatic wrap up of calls. You know, the AI is going to summarize the end of your call and put you straight back on ready.
Mm.
They realize that they need that after call work to have a
Yeah,
breather. You know,
yeah.
they're already at like 92% utilization. That then knocked them up 95%, and people were just completely burnt out. They've just gone on longer toilet breaks, not come back from lunch on time. You know, so I think there is a balancing act, and I don't ever see it sort of. I don't think everyone will get it spot on, but I think if we can help, like I said, if we can help managers have that bit better experience with their teams, then that's kind of that a bit better of a bond between manager and frontline colleague.
100%. And you're dead right. That kind of those transactional customer contacts was a cognitive break. You know, that
Yeah,
was great. You
yeah,
didn't have to think.
yeah,
And I know everyone is saying, other than you just then, but you know, there's a general view, isn't there, that oh, it's good that we're getting rid of them and we're letting our frontline team members deal with more complex tasks. I don't think they're always going to be happy about that unless they make some of those changes that you've just said.
yeah. Or you know, or at least be a bit more sympathetic. You know,
Mm,
be a little bit more
mm.
sympathetic and build sort of, you know, if I think back with my WFM head on, build a little more fat into the plan so people
Yeah.
can have a breather, you know, so you're not running people at 95% utilization or completely burn them out. Just be a
Mm.
little bit more sensitive that people, if they're going to get shouted at for half an hour on we've got the winter coming up. If you work in a utilities company, gas and electric, the prices are changing, going up all the time. Someone gets a call, they're just going to get shouted. If that's your week, 40 hours over that week, you need a little bit of a break in there. So yeah, it is about getting I understand everything's got a cost associated to it, but we just need to be a little bit more sympathetic because the role is getting tougher, which means it gets tougher for the team leader.
Very true. So what you guys are doing, I think, is brilliant. And can you just talk through then what what would a potential customer get then if they say, you know what, I want something that helps my team managers, team leaders, whatever they call them.
So I guess it gives again it gives the organization sort of a little bit more confidence that there's going to be a consistent way of managing, okay, which I think is very important. But also it gives the right levels of insight to have the right discussions, to give the right reporting out of the back end of that as well. Obviously, it's not we collate a lot of data in Centrical. We collate a lot of sort of what's been effective, what hasn't. We can also give the managers their own KPIs. So we can almost set them targets and reward them for doing that.
Mm,
So have you
mm,
done 10 coaching sessions this week, 10 evaluations? Have you given out 10 kudos and said thanks to people? We can give managers their own KPIs and their own kind of, not scorecard, but we can make them feel as though that they're being rewarded for, again, sometimes a day in, day out job that can be quite tough, challenging, mundane, samey. So we can treat them almost the same as we're treating the frontline guys. I reward them for those small incremental improvements and keeping those guys on track as well. So, you know, the insight, if when we speak to customers and we say, okay, I can probably guarantee that your performance management is like this, they're generally not their head. Managers go in, they're not engaged in it. Frontline guys aren't engaged in it. What are you really getting out of it? When we start talking about put it back into the hands where they own it together, where they can collaborate and you know build up sort of incremental gains and reward the guys for it, but putting it all in one place. We don't
mm,
want managers
mm.
jumping all over the place and going for one place for coaching, one place for evaluations, going elsewhere for performance. Let's stick it all in one place and give them some value added time back.
It was to be honest, it was illuminating for me, and it did make me slightly annoyed because I thought, why wasn't this around
Yeah,
when I
yeah,
was doing the job? Because it had everything you needed in one place, and it was a perfect embodiment of that Pareto, like kind of, which I always think applies in contact centers. You could be busy all day, but you're busy in the wrong places. And
yeah,
what I loved about Centrical was it shows you where you can have the most impact, and it kind of is telling you, oh, you haven't given that kudos to these people for a few days. Here's some of the things you might want to do it for, and how are you doing against your coaching numbers? What should you be coaching, and who should be next? And in terms of knowing how to run my day effectively, my week, I thought it was perfect. And the fact that underpinning all of this is, like you say, this kind of transparency and recognition, because there's nothing worse, I think, than people that are in a consequence-free environment, and those consequences like are just the output. My work should have a consequence. It should
yeah,
have recognition. It should have the offer of support. There's nothing worse than feeling like you're working and your manager doesn't even notice, doesn't interact with you during the day. And that's probably more of a problem now with hybrid and remote than
yeah,
ever before.
yeah. Yeah, it's sort of how do we gauge the impact the managers having? And again, it's harder. If you think about an old, probably a bit more old school contact center operation, still, obviously still relevant today, where you might have a floor with maybe 10 teams on, they all report the same ops manager. What's on that? What's on that wall board, calls queue, and all that kind of stuff? Generally, how much impact can the agent have on that? But what we want to show is how much impact is the manager having on the things they can control. And the feedback that we've had from ops managers with Centrical as well is it's given them insight that they didn't have previously as well, because they were waiting for a report to come out each day. they'd have to work through that. They've got better things to be doing. But if they can come in on a morning and say, Martin's team, we've seen an improvement in sales of X% from last week, let's give them a kudos. Let's get a kudos from an ops manager to your top performing agents. All them things just help build up that momentum that everyone knows what's going on, but everyone's being thanked at the right time. Everyone's got the right actions they need to take to improve, and everyone gets the visibility that they need.
Don't give me that kudos until you check my quality, though.
Yes, that's next.
The two didn't go hand in hand very often.
Yeah, good show.
When you think about some of the, and maybe this is like just some of the recent ones, when you started working with companies, what are some of the things they're coming to you with in terms of challenges? Like why are they talking to you? What are some of the things that they hope you can do for them?
Yeah, so we hear we hear a lot, right? That we've got a number of different use cases with Centrical. Obviously, like I said, we are seen as kind of this performance experience platform, and that includes kind of performance, learning, coaching, evaluations, voice of the employee, gamification, and so on. But we have got use cases around how do we help improve that first 90-day attrition. That's sort of burning our house down in terms of cost. So can we make onboarding a bit better? We don't expect, going back to the sort of the person coming into a contact center for the first time, whether it's virtual, in a classroom, to sit through hours and hours of PowerPoint, go and do the longer version of training, maybe on an old LMS, or and then expect it all to stick. So how do we use sort of micro learning, competitions, gamification to help make that more fun? Whether it's getting people through their training quicker because the knowledge is sticking because it's at the right rate, or whether it's getting those people who come out of grad day up to proficiency sooner, because we're not targeting them on 90%. It might be 60% this week, then 65% the next. And we're building up that confidence. And again, as the confidence grows, is how I always see it with those roles. So that's one of our use cases, kind of onboarding, even pre-boarding. We've got a customer now who's using Centrical to gamify kind of getting people through the door on day one,
Wow.
which is pretty cool. A lot of it is around performance. So again, as we've discussed quite a lot, kind of the performance experience. But we even get customers. We have like kind of a lot of learning customers. So we have a lot of learning organizations come to us to say the way that we do things is old. It needs to improve. We need to modernize. Everything's on PowerPoints or on a SharePoint, and the trainer stands in front of the same classroom every week and delivers. And it's not
Just presses
really
play.
yeah, it's not really engaging. So how do we help with that? So we've got a lot of kind of learning use cases, ongoing learning. Can we complement a learning management solution by using the gamification mechanics and the micro learning to complement that longer form stuff? But again, it's always with a business outcome, right? We can't get away from that, but it's always with the frontline colleagues at heart. This is a solution built for people. It's not like an efficiency saving solution. And I guess there's an argument, if you improve your performance enough, there could be efficiency savings, but that's not generally how we approach this. I think there's a lot of people now, going back to what we discussed at the start, they think about their employee equally as they do their customers now, which 25 years ago just was not the case at all.
And I think if they're using your system, they would understand their employees better than just the occasional or too often survey, because you're getting to see, and I guess you get a sense of when people are using it. You mentioned before, there's peer to peer. It's a communication hub as well in terms of people recognizing each other's work and things like that, and the extent to which that is being utilized and engaged tells you a lot about how engaged people are in the purpose of the company.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And on the point of kind of peer-to-peer recognition, we also have kind of peer-to-peer knowledge sharing, which I think is quite good. Not like a sort of an electronic suggestion box, but kind of people being able to contribute what works for them. Because you've got great learning teams and great training teams and great coaching teams and all these organizations, but the frontline guys know their customers better than anyone, right? So why not let them share that knowledge?
Yeah.
If it's a new product, if it's dealing with vulnerable customers, whatever it might be, let people share that.
Mm.
This works for me. Why don't you give it a try? And then you can sort of reward people for sharing that as well, because you don't want just someone sat on all this great knowledge who might have been there for 4 or 5 years. Get them to share that with their peers as well and reward them for doing so. So I think that's quite crucial, and customers also love that element as well. And again, there's an argument that takes some of the burden off their learning team.
Yeah.
This is what we're hearing. There's some content. It's almost creating that content for each other in real time.
And again, I can't help but thinking about those teams that have some of their colleagues working from home. They might not have the benefit of being sat next to the most experienced person. Because I can remember one place I was at. My all of my learning, I would point to the lady that sat next to me who'd been at the contact center 20 years. I must
Yeah,
have driven her insane
yeah,
because
yeah,
how do I do this? How do I do that? And she's like, no, do it this way, do it this
yeah,
way.
yeah.
And this gives them that regardless of where they're located.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. So you've got your great content, you've got your micro learning, you've got your rewards for doing your quizzes, then you've got this contribution where you can go in and save them, and almost sort of keep a little file of ones that work for you. It's really really cool, and this was a development that came from a customer. A
Oh,
customer
really?
came to us and said, "I think this would be really great." So we put it on the roadmap, put it into development, and customers love it.
And for you then, um, when you think about what the future might hold, what excites you the most? And that can be about the industry or Centrical or what. What do you think about that?
I think obviously AI is still on everyone's lips. So I think some of the stuff we've got coming down the line with AI and further developments, I think, is going to continue to revolutionize the experience that these frontline teams and their managers have. Um, I guess for me, I guess it's still a little bit up in the air. I would like to see how do we get a handle on the attrition
Mm,
piece, because I think
yeah,
that is something that is impacting everyone. And again, that is impacting not just the businesses, it's impacting other colleagues, it's impacting the customer, because there's a load of new starters just going through the mill all the time. So I would like to see how as an industry we tackle that. It's always been an issue, but I would love to
mm,
see us get a handle on that as an industry. In terms of me personally, like I said, I've got no plans of going anywhere soon. I love what we do. I really do. When we go to industry events, what we're doing is kind of very unique. But I also think what we're
yeah,
doing is just common sense, right? It's like I always sort of make the joke when I speak to customers that if in an ideal world, right, what the CEO wants and what the agent and the team leader wants are two completely different things. And if they were doing what they wanted them to do, I wouldn't be in a job, right? I'd be working elsewhere. But if we can just
yeah.
bridge that gap slightly through getting people a
Mm,
bit more bought in, I think
mm.
that's a win-win for. I think that's a win-win for everyone.
Do you when you were the 17-year-old Ian, did you think you'd still be in the industry and a like international director?
Absolutely not. No, no. I absolutely not. I thought I would sort of pull my finger out and go back to uni. I really did. But then, like I said, I've got a flavour for going out with having money to go out on the weekend, having a car, going, to Ibiza and music festivals and all the stuff that teenagers and early 20-year-olds kind of get into. And then I kind of realized that, it wasn't a bad industry to get into. I guess it's getting people through that first 18 months, nine
Yeah.
months, getting them to
Mm,
see, building them out a development pathway, making it
mm,
visible. We did a thing when I was a planning manager about kind of getting people to come in and sit with us to understand what we did, why we said no to things, why those scumbags in the corner that said no to every request. And I think contact centers need to do that a bit more, is kind of educate their frontline colleagues about what else is possible in that business or in the industry in general. And I think some of the stuff that you're doing with sort of the team leader community, I think, is getting people to think a little bit wider than just their day-to-day role, which I think we need to do to
mm.
keep people in the industry. But a development pathway is crucial for that. If you stick around in 9 months' time, I always talk about in Central we can kind of have content that people can enroll in. So if you stick around and you get to a certain level, which is, you doing a good job over a period of time, you can enroll to be a team leader. You can
Yeah.
enroll to learn about workforce management or moving into a quality role. But just setting that out and giving people that option, I still think there's not a great way of always doing that.
I love that. I completely agree because I think when people are joining the industry, uh, entry operations kind of level, they're not thinking about the future and they don't know. They don't know the possibilities that exist within our industry, and it's getting that in their heads
Yeah,
and helping them see it and finding the thing. Like for you, it was, planning. Someone saw something in you that said, let's do planning. You'd be
yeah,
good at it, and think about those opportunities. You went abroad and worked abroad early on, very early on. These are things that you don't get if you, well, not as often, I guess, but you don't get if you've gone in retail or some of the other places that are kind of taking our
yeah,
talent. I completely agree. And that kind of get them on a path that shows them what's possible as quickly as possible.
yeah, yeah. But get like help them to care as well.
Mm,
So I think if they see purpose and worth in what they're doing, in
it's
a
so true. Mm.
they might then hang around and say, well, I feel really valued and I'm kind of bought into this person I work with, these people I work for. I will hang around and I will see, what the next 6 months holds.
Well,
So
I'm glad 17-year-old Ian decided to stay in the industry. I know many, many people will be as well. For people that want to, like, I openly say I was blown away by seeing what you guys offer. Um, how can people carry on this conversation and just kind of get to see it visually as well from you?
yeah, so obviously, we've got a lot of great stuff on our website. There's a lot of video walkthroughs and demos. Also, they can just reach out to me if they need to on LinkedIn, or if we could maybe share my email address, and be happy to have a conversation with people. We're also at a lot of events, so we'll be at we attend the forum events. We'll be at the CCMA. We're doing our own first big game next week, which you're going to be a part of, which is fantastic. Where we're going to have people from the industry, people from the forum, recruitment, yourself, talking about all of these things we've discussed today. So we'll be showcasing a little bit of what we do there as well. But yeah, I mean, I would just LinkedIn. We've got a lot of stuff on there. There's so many repositories of kind of info on what we do. But again, it's always nice to have a chat with someone and just see what their pain points are, because no one's impressed with technology, right? If you're not talking to a pain, it's like you could let's just demo all these functions, or let's have a look at all these features, and you could be talking to someone
Yeah.
who doesn't really care about what it is you're showing them. So yeah, a conversation is 5-10 minute conversation is always great, but I'm more than happy for people to reach out to me for that.
And I'm really looking forward to our event next week. I think, would it be okay if I just play them this podcast?
Yeah, absolutely. Just play that. Yeah,
Just your bits.
yeah. We'll just do that, and then I think there's a happy hour, so we'll just start that early.
Ian Chappell, thanks very much for coming on, and please
But
do carry on the great work, my friend.
great. Thank you.